So this was initially supposed to be a movie review-ish, with the whole romance versus chemistry being just a small section of that review. But I ended up writing a bit too much on this topic and it felt weird to have half of the video about a topic that strays too far from the movie itself. So I decided to make it a separate video, or the only video, because I guess I wasn't too sure whether or not I would actually get the movie review done. You know, I've watched the movie quite a while ago. Of course, I've also rewatched it recently, and it was essentially more of the second season. It followed the manga somewhat faithfully but rushed and cut some other parts, some very important parts, like the reason Yotsuba wears a ribbon, her POV chapters where we see her perspective on Futaro and her sisters, what she thinks of their relationship and so on. I didn't expect scenes like Ichika leaving school or Itsuki realizing she was in love to be adapted, but at least adapt Yotsuba scenes? I mean, come on? It was an alright movie, one of the movies of all time for sure, but romance versus chemistry? I like this topic, far more interesting of a topic, let's talk about it. This is a topic that seems to be brought up every so often in my comment section, especially recently since more and more people have watched the movie, a big part of them being anime only watchers. And this started a debate centered around this romance versus chemistry topic. Which Quint had the best chemistry with Futaro? Who he showed more affection towards? Is chemistry even necessary? Can there be romance without it? Well, let's break this down. Now, these two terms are not as directly debatable as people think they are, at least not in our case. I have used the term romantic chemistry before when referring to what Yotsuba and Futaro lacked in their relationship, which might make some people confused because they're supposed to be two different things, right? Not really, because chemistry is part of romance. Romance is love, and chemistry is a connection, a spark, a comfortability between two people that share some form of love. It's when two people hit it off. They're drawn to each other physically or otherwise. It's when their conversations flow naturally in a relaxed way and their gestures become laden with meaning. Of course, there is also platonic chemistry when two people hit it off as best friends, siblings, or whatever platonic relationship they have. When they're very comfortable with each other, they don't feel awkward around each other, when they share that natural flow and know the boundaries of their relationship. However, platonic chemistry does not apply to the Quints, because all five of them love Futaro. He might not love all of them, at least not equally, but since he is a harem protagonist, he has to show some affection towards all five. So love, therefore romance, is present in all cases, and when romance is present in all cases, you can't have platonic chemistry because the relationships are not platonic. Does that make sense? Even though Futaro only chose one and presumably only loves one, the other four's feelings for him don't disappear, sadly. They overstep their boundaries as friends and therefore move towards romantic chemistry. Now usually people say that a couple had no chemistry when the story feels like it's forcing them together. Like the relationship is a foregone conclusion, so there's no suspense, no excitement, no will they one day. In that situation, the reader or viewer might decide they'd rather have the character end up with somebody else that has a more interesting personality connection. A connection that has a lot of give and take, has misunderstandings, overthinking, conflict, or a connection where two people actively and deeply appreciate things about one another. Think about romantic chemistry this way. When somebody feels the need to exert an unreasonable amount of effort to keep a conversation going, it's a lack of chemistry. When things flow easily and naturally, it's chemistry. Nice and simple. So there isn't any romance versus chemistry debate. Two people either have romantic chemistry or their relationship is forced or underdeveloped. It's pretty straightforward. Tell me the name of a good story in the history of stories where the main couple does not have chemistry. Obviously one where the point of the story is not to show that the couple does not have chemistry. But the big question is, do the Quints and Futaro have that romantic chemistry? Yes and no, sort of. Ichika is probably who most people would think of to have the greatest romantic chemistry with Futaro out of all of her sisters. They tease each other a lot, have a lot of playfulness in their interactions, so they lend that sexual tension as much as the story allows. But they also rely on each other, confide in each other. Futaro deeply appreciates her taking the big sister responsibility and shares the burden it entitles. Ichika also appreciates the things Futaro does for her and her sister, so they developed a profound connection beyond first impressions. They also have conflict multiple times throughout the story, both soft and hard. In the beginning, during the fireworks festival, during the legend that binds, scrambled eggs, and whatever that was after the scrambled eggs, conflicts they overcame together. They also share a lot of complementary characteristics, such as solving problems together, like when Itsuki got mad and refused to study with them. Futaro and Ichika worked together and solved that issue. They draw out the best of each other. Ichika managed to get the highest score on her exam because of Futaro, while Futaro always comes to Ichika for advice and motivation. They play off really well with each other. So they seem to have this romantic chemistry nailed so deep to the wood that it even curled inside, making it impossible to remove, right? Well, not if the wood is rotten and it breaks apart, leaving the nail, aka romantic chemistry, intact, but no wood, aka story, to be placed in. Unfortunately, the classic character assassination. I also need to mention that what kept the chemistry from being a solid 10 out of 10 is the fact that they weren't entirely honest with each other. They never fully opened themselves to each other. And it becomes very obvious when you look at how casually Futaro opens up to some of the other queens. But moving from an almost 10 out of 10 chemistry to possibly the least, we've got Nino. Now, I love Nino. She's my favorite queen, but romantic chemistry is not what she offers. If we were to look on the requirement list, she does check a couple of things. She and Futaro have things they deeply appreciate about each other. Nino's love for her family and Futaro's commitment to supporting them. They can also talk comfortably every now and then, not after she confessed though. That's when their comfortability falls apart. That's when every bit of chemistry falls apart. She becomes a bit desperate and everything she does is one-sided. She only does what she thinks Futaro would like, but not what he actually likes. They share a few impactful moments, their interactions are quite entertaining to read. Nino was pivotal in making Futaro accept love, but they have little to no chemistry, especially post-confession. In a similar boat is Miku, so similar that I'm not entirely sure if she has less, more, or the same romantic chemistry as Nino, which is very little if at all. They have a very wholesome relationship based on trust, but she's like a British person that drives on the left side of the road in Germany. Plenty of obstacles that could have been easily avoided if she drove on the right side. She doesn't have time to form a proper connection with Futaro, let alone a romantic one, let alone adding chemistry on top of that. She has impeccable character development, but no romantic chemistry with Futaro. Which leads us to the youngest queen. Obviously Yotsuba will be the last since she's the chosen one. The meat monster Itsuki. Itsuki knows Futaro as much as he knows her, minus some disguises. She's been in his house, knows his circumstances, has a good relation with his father and sister. While the reverse is also true, minus the father. She's also a mirror to Futaro. Both stand up for each other, are loyal to each other. They showed their differences and showed how they overcame them. They share the same interests, they tease each other often. She is the queen that wants to help Futaro for the sake of himself. She always assists Futaro with everything without a necessary benefit for herself. At the same time, she's Futaro's anchor throughout the entire series. They casually open up to each other, nobody pursues the other, they add a definition of a natural relationship. But I think everybody knows that. Their bond is amazing, but that doesn't mean much when you're a plot device. Sorry, Miti. Yotsuba. I think most of you are expecting me to say that Yotsuba and Futaro lacked any and all romantic chemistry. I know I talked about this before in one of my videos, but I don't know which, so I don't know exactly what I said. Anyway, romantic chemistry. Yotsuba supported Futaro's cause from the very beginning without expecting anything in return. Of course, we know why she did it, but that's another thing entirely. There's a lot of substance to their interactions that doesn't involve them knowing each other before. Nevertheless, they both share the goal of getting the sisters to study and support Futaro on the task. This was the foundation of their bond. Futaro appreciated her cooperative nature. Throughout the series, we've seen instances where Futaro has reached out to Yotsuba for help, like in chapter 21, when he trusts her to keep her sisters from leaving their study session. During the field trip, he lets Yotsuba tour him around the most entertaining places, all which leading to him recognizing her efforts and taking on Raiha's suggestion to thank her, aka the date. which eventually ends up in the park at the swings where the chemistry is an all-time high. They feel at ease, comfortable, they even get competitive, and we see the only time Futaro has laughed out loud because he was having fun. The date goes from Futaro wanting to pay Yotsuba back to just being a casual hangout between two friends. There's a sense of familiarity between them that's based on trust. When Miku runs away in Kyoto and he and Yotsuba go search for her, he actually opens up to Yotsuba about his feelings. He's obviously embarrassed, but they also share some advice. And so they have trust that they can rely on each other. When one is in trouble, the other can help. And they also push each other out of their comfort zone, which leads to some individual growth. They clearly have a strong foundation that's eager to develop into romance and absolutely blow everyone else aside with their chemistry. Well, that doesn't happen. Their date was the peak of their chemistry, but also the end of it. Prior to Futaro's confession, we haven't seen him flinch or even get slightly nervous at the idea of a romance with Yotsuba. He didn't even consider it. He mostly reacts in a serious deadpan manner, treating it more like a joke than an actual serious statement, which is fucking annoying. Not going to lie, it's part of why I dislike Futaro's character post last exam arc. He doesn't react anymore. He makes this stupid poker face whenever an important moment comes around, and that's that. Futaro and Yotsuba's romantic chemistry, much like their relationship, wasn't developed, which is why it pales in comparison to Ichika and Itsuki. So it's not that they didn't have romantic chemistry. Oh, trust me, it was said to be so good with their date. It's that it was left for dead. But they had it nonetheless. Less than Ichika and Itsuki, but more than Nino and Miku. She's right in the middle, so it's actually not that bad, strictly speaking of romantic chemistry. The point of this video was to show that two characters either have romantic chemistry, or the romance is bad or underdeveloped. There is no romance without chemistry, there can't be. This debate is not a debate.